Hello, and welcome to the Off-Meta Umineko Read-Along podcast, the monthly podcast where I guide my friends and first-time readers through my favorite story of all time, the highly acclaimed murder mystery visual novel Umineko When They Cry. We're discussing its narrative and themes, and they'll work together with our community to try and solve its various mysteries. Hope you'll join us in this exciting journey as we delve into the witch's cat box. I'm Kyle J, and joining me on our one-way trip to Rokkenjiima, we have our readers, James Capelli, Hayley, and Becca. Welcome, y'all. So, just to let the readers know, we had originally recorded this episode about a month ago, but some audio got corrupted. At this point in time, we just finished reading episode 5, but we'll do our best to talk about this section of reading based on how we felt at the time, with as few spoilers for the rest of this episode as possible. But if something slips through, my apologies. So, with all that said, how was y'all's read last month?
I feel like this, for me, this read was probably actually only about 3 weeks ago because of how behind I was.
That's true.
That's great for you, actually. From what I recall, I remember being very conflicted on this reading, right? Like, on one hand, take it at face value, straight up, it's just fun. It's just a good time. You get to see what it means for when they keep talking about the red versus the blue, right? I know we had it at the end of episode 4, but that kind of felt like a dramatic fight, dramatic season finale, whatever. To see that turned into, hey, reader, this is kind of what you can expect from the rest of the game. You know, I like getting that understanding, that perspective. But I also felt kind of disconnected from it. I don't know. I'm not even going to say it was because we know that Kinzo's been dead the whole time. It just felt like it was like very much like I was watching a play. Very much I felt like I was watching a production, right? And like I liked the introduction of Dlanor, but Dlanor doesn't really do as much in this as I would have wanted them to do, even though she is very much part of the scene. I don't know. And maybe just like the other two angels,
Gertrude and Cornelia.
Yeah, like why are they here? What purpose do they serve? I know, like, you know, in the next couple of episodes we see a bit more with them, not a lot. I was kind of expecting to have them be very similar to the antithesis of the Seven Sisters, but they're not. At least not in this in this episode part.
That's fair.
So I'm curious, Capelli.
Yo.
I enjoyed this bit of the read. I feel like this was the bit of the read where I said to Kyle, yeah, I'll be caught up, no problem. Because then the next bit I hated. But I was thoroughly enjoying this.
That's so interesting because I feel like 5-4 versus this 5-3 are so similar.
Yeah, no, I liked the beginning half of episode 5 and hated everything that was later.
Interesting.
What do you mean by it felt like you were watching a play? Like, that's how I always feel about consuming any media, but, like, I get engrossed in it and care about it. So, like, even if I'm watching a play, I still care about it.
I know. I struggle to put words to this. I think I even reached out to Kyle at one point, or we had a quick conversation about it, where it just felt that this scene, this battle, there was something I just couldn't get super engaged in. I think actually I do remember when we recorded this the first time, I remember what I said was, and I will say this in subsequent episodes, is the concept that Battler is acting as a piece of Lambdadelta. That knowledge in my head is like, okay, I'm not watching Battler, right? Even in the first half of the story, we have moments where it's like, okay, I clearly know this is a machination of Beatrice. I know that this is not what is given to me at face value, but I'm still invested. I guess I just dislike Lambdadelta as a person so much that the idea of them manipulating this and using the protagonist's face, and like the scene where at the end where she jumps into his arms is very much like I absolutely understand everything that the author is going for in this moment. Like the complicated emotions of what I feel about this being a piece of Lambdadelta. I don't know, even just leading up to that is just like, how dare you take his catchphrase, where the catchphrase is literally something you can track through the story to show his growth as a character, and kind of use that to your own twisted, you know, motives. I don't know. I feel like something like that just kind of kept me from getting too invested in this part.
That's why it's so interesting to me, though. Like,
yeah, and the fact that like even that concept and talking about everything I just said as a separate topic is still a fun thing to talk about. Is why I'm still like, it's cool that you can do that.
I really enjoy this battle. I think it is so interesting. I love the introduction of Dlanor here. I love Gertrude and Cornelia. I also think it's very interesting that, to me, maybe not to anyone else, but to me, Gertrude and Cornelia look like younger versions of Rosa and Ava. I forget which one is which, if Gertrude is the long hair one or the short hair one.
They definitely have like something to do with their hairstyles that like is reminiscent of the two of them for sure.
Yeah. And I think that this whole battle is so dynamic in a way because we're finally seeing people using these red truths and blue truths and shields and whatever in very dynamic ways because they are all very familiar with how the game works already. Like, they're not battler having to learn it on their feet in a fight to the death. They are witches who have been around for eons or whatever and just like going after each other. But I think it's very purposeful that everything that we're seeing here is a construct of Lambdadelta, and we know that it's not really Battler and it's not really Beato, but their pieces I do think still have like some piece of the characters we know as of Battler and Beato in them. So it's really interesting because we do see, I don't remember if this was like 5.3 or if it happens in this episode, but Beato the piece on the board realizes kind of what's happening in a meta sense, and she talks to Gap and Runaway about like hiding the bodies. That's so interesting to me. It raises a lot of questions and opens a lot of possibilities, and so I just found all of this very exciting and fascinating.
Yeah.
I agree on, I think, with everything that you just said, especially as their pieces do contain elements of the characters that we've come to know and love, you know? Like, it felt almost like the author was taking it as an opportunity to really play with the parts of them that he wouldn't normally get to explore. Like, the sort of, the more cheesy, sort of cliche bits about them that I particularly like, especially. So it was enjoyable, for sure.
There's definitely a case to be made that this is Lambdadelta's fan fiction.
Oh, we'll get there.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, this week, we are continuing episode 5, End of the Golden Witch, with about 4 hours of reading, ending when golden butterflies appear, followed by text that reads, "Beatrice, it's time for you to die now. I hope that your heart is stopped by the hand of the person you desire." After which the clock advances from 1:37 p.m. to midnight, which is videos 85 through 87 of the YouTube playlist. If you're not caught up to that point yet, go ahead and stop the podcast and catch up before rejoining us, or if you're just listening to us along for the ride, or you've read Umineko already, welcome aboard.
Knowing what we know now, did that feel a little heavy-handed, like of an ending?
Which part?
Let the person you desire, blah blah blah. Like,
I mean,
because it's not spelled out yet, like what's going on between the characters. But
we all know.
Oh, come on, Becca and I have been saying this for months.
We've been saying this since the beginning.
Hold on. Yes. And I don't feel the story needed to continue to like spoon feed it, right? I mean, the people who are in tune with, I'll say, human nature, understand what's happening. Does the story need to force feed it? No. I feel like if you kind of get how people are, it adds to the nuance. I don't know. I never like stories that make romance like, oh yes, and then they were in love.
But this,
like, I don't know.
This doesn't do that. I think that this story categorically does not do that.
That line does, though.
No. Oh, Capelli, you're not a yearner. You're not a yearner.
That is actively true. That is actively true. I am not. I categorically dislike most fictional romances because they are so goddamn forced.
This one isn't forced, though, baby. This one
is not forced. This is like oh man! So
they are obsessed with each other.
Yeah, they
are.
And
yes,
so
they are.
The joy of that line is that now it's like, oh yes, everything I was thinking was right. How are we gonna get there?
Yeah. All right.
Now we finally. It has been 5 episodes, and now it's finally explicit. Finally here now. Right.
I'm on board.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get to it. Our story resumes in the morning with everyone gathered outside of the door to Kinzo's study. Eva's banging on the door trying to wake up Kinzo, as he's been completely incommunicado since Natsuhi gave him the daily report at 11 p.m. last night. With murders having occurred, and likely to continue, Natsuhi can no longer argue against breaking into Kinzo's study to make sure that he's alright. Erika begins to go into a lecture about how, if successful, the serial murder case would break the record for the number of deaths in a mystery. Erika name-drops several mystery books, but is schooled when Battler corrects her on the Japanese record holder. We even cut to the witch's smoking room to see Lambdadelta and Bern making fun of Erika's mistake. Back on the game board, Erika says that Battler must be quite well read, but he nonchalantly counters that someone like him, who only reads maybe 100 books a year, would be arrogant to call themselves a reader. With Erika thoroughly owned, the conversation returns to how best to break into Kinzo's study. They determine that the best course of action is to use a ladder from the mansion's inner courtyard to break a window on the 3rd floor. As Rudolph climbs the ladder, we see Beatrice, Kinzo, and Ronave and Gap discussing their plans to have Kinzo escape the room at the last second. While Gap had previously been slated to stay with Kinzo and fight Erika, at the last minute, Beatrice decides that she will be the one to stay and fight. Everyone vanishes as Rudolph makes his way up to the window, and, after knocking and yelling loudly for a time, he breaks the window and crawls inside. Rudolph searches the multi-room space, but finds it empty, with only small signs that Kinzo may have been there several hours gone. Activating the auto-lock, Natsuhi, Erika, Eva, and the others rush in to confirm that Kinzo is not there. Natsuhi and the servants claim that Kinzo often wakes in the middle of the night and wanders the mansion, so it's not all that surprising that he isn't here. Regardless, they decide to thoroughly search the room to make sure. Erika warns everyone to not try and hide or alter any evidence, as her photographic memory will let her instantly spot it, and that would make for a third-rate mystery.
The third-rate mystery line throughout this whole episode annoys the fuck out of me, and I cannot explain why, but it just does. Also, this comment about, I bet you only read 100 books a year. What? Who does?
But again, that's just Lambdadelta. That's not the real Battler saying that shit.
I know. I'm not saying it's a Battler problem. I just take issue with the line. It's just such pretentious shit, and I hate it.
It's theoretically something Battler could say.
It is theoretically something Battler could say, because you have to stay true to the character. I do love that. I don't think Battler really believes that shit, but it is a very great slap in the face to Erika, and I do love it for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Also, rich people have so much time on their hands because they just pay other people to do all of their other shit for them, so they have way more free time to read that many books.
God, could you imagine just being rich and all your needs taken care of? You just get to live life, and AI can take care of all the important shit in life, like we were kind of promised in our 90s that we would thrive as young adults. Oh, what a life!
Man, if I read 5 books a year, I'm proud of myself.
Literally,
right?
Same. Yeah.
I'm counting every episode of Umineko as a separate book for my tally this year, for sure.
Definitely.
And that's still only going to get us to 4, because 4 of them were last year. Oh, man. I do think it's interesting, because Battler is kind of, known as, he's not, a delinquent, but, he's definitely viewed as being, this, he doesn't care about his studies, but I guess he's shirking all of his responsibilities to read a shit ton of books, so.
That's very Dead Poet Society of him.
A lot of times, the books that are referenced in this story are mangas. So would you count reading a manga as one of your 100 set of books in a year? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a book.
Depends on the manga, I guess.
I count it.
The group in the courtyard arrives, and as the room is being searched, Beatrice comforts Natsuhi in the metaworld, saying that there's no way that they can prove that Kinzo doesn't exist because of the Devil's Proof. With the search complete, Erika gathers everyone's attention to begin laying out the facts of the case. She begins by questioning Natsuhi's claim that she was the last person to have seen Kinzo at 11 p.m. last night. Kyrie had asked who had last seen Kinzo and hoped that someone might mark themselves suspicious by their answer, with Natsuhi responding that she was the last person to see him, with no qualifiers despite the definite chance that Kinzo had been caught up in the crime. It's almost as if Natsuhi was certain that Kinzo could not have met anyone else that night for some reason. This is especially odd because Natsuhi had just claimed that Kinzo was wont to wake up in the middle of the night and wander the mansion. With Natsuhi so obviously suspicious, Erika really wants some way to confirm Natsuhi's alibi, because only a third-rate mystery would have the most suspicious person actually be the culprit. While Eva can confirm that Natsuhi did at least leave Kinzo's study at 11 p.m. last night, she can't confirm anything about the presence of Kinzo himself. In fact, the adult siblings have had enough of this farce. With so many people already dead, they can no longer ignore Kraus and Natsuhi's ongoing attempt to hide Kinzo's death and their embezzlement of his funds. Erika then moves to the metaworld and confronts the illusion of Kinzo directly. However, Beatrice herself then appears and whisks them away to Purgatorio. The two foes introduce themselves to each other, and then their battle begins. Beatrice strikes first with a blue truth. You can't eliminate the possibility that Natsuhi met with Kinzo at 11 p.m. In the 6+ hours between then and the time you all barged into the study, Kinzo had every opportunity to escape. Because of this, you can't state decisively that Kinzo doesn't exist. Beatrice mocks Erika's inability to strike down that blue truth as a human who only just came to the island yesterday. However, Erika summons a piece of her own, the Archbishop of Witch Hunting, Dlanor A. Knox. Back on the game board, Eva confronts Natsuhi's claim that Kinzo could have left the room sometime during the night. However, Eva reveals that after Natsuhi had left Kinzo's study at 11 p.m., she had placed a piece of receipt paper in the door. When Rudolph opened the door for everyone just now, she verified the receipt fell from the exact spot she had placed it, proving that no one had opened the door since then. Representing this fact in the magical world, a subordinate of Delanor's, Gertrude, appears and blockades the door with the Chester sisters. She says in red, "From last night at 2300 and until the present time, the study door was not opened even once." When Rudolph and Kyrie confirm that the windows were all locked from the inside when Rudolph broke in, Cornelia, another of Delanor's subordinates, appears to inform us in red that the windows were all locked. With the doors and windows now unusable, how is Kinzo supposed to have vanished from this room between then and now? And so he claims that there may be some sort of hidden door that none of them have been able to find. Summoning a magic portal to escape through, Beatrice says in blue, "No proof is required. It's devil's proof. The existence of a hidden door is impossible to discover or disprove. Therefore, no one can eliminate the possibility that Kinzo escaped from this study through a hidden door." However, both Beatrice's portal and her blue are suddenly and mercilessly cut through by Delanor's blood-red longsword. As she says in red, "I will not allow a hidden door to exist in this room." Beatrice is stunned by Delanor's ability to use the red truth despite being neither the game master nor the owner of the study who would know the truth of the existence of any hidden doors here. No, as Erika says, Dlanor is the rules that define the mystery genre, the 10 wedges to pierce witches, and as it is declared in Knox's third, it is forbidden for hidden passages to exist.
Okay, so with this, I actually kind of was like, this feels like some weird bullshit, so I went to Google to try and debunk some of what was going on in terms of like Knox's Decalogue and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when I looked it up, Knox's third is in fact like it is forbidden. The game obviously like modifies some of Knox's rules slightly to make them like more specific to Umineko, but the text of the actual rule is apparently not more than one secret or hidden passage can exist. And so I was like, so one could exist, but then I remembered there's the secret tunnel to Kuadorian. So like technically that is accounted for in this game. But also, as you'll hear in future episodes, we've kind of gone over the Knox's Decalogue stuff, and I do think it is generally well deployed here because it is more of a, it's not just that hidden passages can't exist, it's hidden passages that the detective doesn't know about can't exist.
Right. Because it would be very unfun if the answer to the mystery was just like, oh yeah, there was a door you could never find. Cool.
Yeah, a real Deus Ex Machina situation. But also, everything that I love here, I love the introduction of Dlanor so much, even though she's an antagonist here to us. Like, if you're on Battler's side, she's so cool. And I'm so obsessed with the fact that she has a permanent ooh-woo, like, 3 kitty face. I love that she is always just, even when she's got a giant-ass sword in her hand, she's over there like, ooh-woo, you can't do that. I won't let you. I'm gonna fuck you up.
It's like the little like kitty cat face that she gets sometimes, right? Like upside down 3. I love it.
Yeah, the ooh-woo. She has it like 100% of the time. It's not sometimes. It's all the time. I love it.
She has the best character design introduced in a while.
Yeah, she's got like that big rook arm.
Yeah, she literally looks like a fancy chess piece, which is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wish she was wearing pants, though, personally. I feel like she has like the classic like Seven Sisters of Purgatory weird leotard thing going on.
The bodysuit is weird.
Yeah, it's something the author likes. Not a fan. I wish they wouldn't do that, but it's kind of a thing of the culture and the times, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll never understand what it means to be a true weeaboo. We are not Japanese.
That is true.
I don't need to be a weeaboo to still love the Seven Sisters of Purgatory.
So true. I'll never understand that take, but I respect the hell out of it from you.
I love my 7 best friends. They're bad bitches and they all slay. Thank you.
They're all definitely real, and they definitely don't encourage me to do bad things in my head.
I want to make a very old reference. 7 stakes designed after the 7 sins of humanity. That's a family. And if you don't know the reference, I'll send you the link later.
Yeah, I can say I do.
No idea. Yeah. I I actually, despite her character design, I don't like her. I'm sorry.
Oh. Hayley.
She annoys me. I know. There's something about her that just really irritates me. I guess this feels kind of like in the way that Maria just annoys Ben, but that does actually seem justified. But I don't know. Dlanor does that for me. She just really gets under my skin, and I don't know why.
All right.
Oh, the other thing that I want to mention, because I think I mentioned this in our original recording of this episode, is I didn't really pick up on it a whole lot until I made a post on Twitter, on my private Twitter account, that was like, I'm obsessed with Dlanor and her 3 kitty uwu face. And I have like literally 2 friends who have read this whole VN before. And one of them was like, I love her so much. And also her vocal tick, the fact that she says des at the end of like almost every sentence is just like a cute thing that kids will do. But it also sounds like she's saying death all the time, which is cool. She's like this total harbinger of doom. And this, she is just like a weapon to use against witches, which is so interesting to me, especially, you know, we're re-recording this with foreknowledge of what's about to come after. So we've seen her talk to Battler in the Golden Land, but especially knowing her perspective and what she holds true to be her personal mission, it's so interesting to me that she is just presented to us originally as this very fearsome weapon. And then she becomes this really, you realize later that she's actually incredibly thoughtful, which I love very much.
The thing I like about Dlanor a lot is it's very clear that they take their stance on the game board very professionally. And I just think that's neat. And like this story, you don't expect to see professionalism. And I'm happy to see it.
Oh, also on the note of Delanor's speech verbal tics, the way that she capitalizes, in the English translation, they have a bunch of like sections that are like in capital letters. And that is in the Japanese, she would end her sentences using katakana. And so for the English version, they switched to having it be capitalized. Beatrice and Dlanor then begin their battle in earnest. Beatrice starts with the blue. It is possible that, after slipping out the door, Kinzo noticed the trick with the receipt and correctly returned it to its original place. However, Dlanor easily cuts that down with the red. That possibility has already been eliminated in red. After 2300, the door to the study was not opened even once. Beatrice tries again with the blue. Kinzo might have been a marvelous mage and inventor. He might have invented a concoction to turn his body into mist and slip down through the keyhole. However, Dlanor once again simply denies such possibilities outright. No such substances exist. It must not exist. Maybe he invented a teleportation device. That possibility is impossible to eliminate because of the devil's proof. Such a machine does not exist. I will not permit it to exist. Oh, so you can examine every chemical substance in the world? You can rule out the existence of the unknown scientific devices? There's no way you can. It's a devil's proof. You cannot rule out their existence. I will repeat, in the name of God, I will not permit such chemicals or devices to exist. From now until the end of time, I will not permit them to exist. As Erika explains, according to Knox's fourth, it is forbidden for unknown drugs or obscure scientific devices to be used. Beatrice is astounded by the arrogance of denying even humanity's hopes and dreams of the future. Regrouping after that initial exchange of blows, Beatrice decides to try a different tactic. Beatrice gives a barrage of blue truths. Natsuhi claims to have talked with Kinzo in the study, but she never said that she spoke with him face to face. Therefore, if Kinzo was in a location other than the study, there's no contradiction as long as they held a conversation. Natsuhi used the internal phone line in the study to speak with Kinzo, who is in another place. There's nothing strange about Kinzo, who hates the relatives, predicting that they would enter his study and leaving to go elsewhere. He might have gone to the hidden mansion, Kuidorian. There's a chance that Kinzo mentioned by Natsuhi does not refer to the person himself. The Kinzo spoken of by Natsuhi might have been another name for this room. Kinzo had taken refuge in Kuidorian and was impossible to contact. Perhaps Natsuhi called this room Father, and by contemplating inside it, she felt as though she had received some sort of revelation from Kinzo. Even if, as you say, this is a locked room and impossible to escape from, we cannot deny the possibility that he is still hiding in this room. I'm not talking about a hidden door. It might be under the bed or above the ceiling. It might be hiding in such a subtle blind spot that even a demon would not recognize it. Or it might be that Natsuhi, ordered by Kinzo to act as his proxy, considered herself both his representative and another Kinzo. In other words, it's possible that Natsuhi was also Kinzo. I've got plenty more. At 11 o'clock last night, Kinzo escaped out the window. Natsuhi watched him go and then locked the window. This doesn't lead to any problems. In fact, it might be the most beautiful blue truth yet. With all those blue truths being valid by Knox's Decalogue, Dlanor could do nothing to refute them. However, back on the game board, Erika does her own part. Confronting Natsuhi, Erika gets her to more explicitly state her claim that she spoke to Kinzo in his study last night. Gertrude and Cornelia then turn Natsuhi's own words, spoken by the one who knows the truth, into red truths to deny Beatrice's blue. The Kinzo Natsuhi mentions refers to nothing other than Oshirimiya Kinzo, Natsuhi claims that she was face-to-face with Kinzo in the study at 11 p.m. With that, all but Beatrice's claim that Kinzo is still hidden in the study have been destroyed. Dlanor asks Beatrice where then in the study is Kinzo hiding. Maybe he's under the bed. That possibility was searched and voided. Maybe he's in the bathtub. Searched and voided. Inside the closet, under the desk, behind the curtains. Searched and voided, voided, voided. Behind the bookshelf, behind the closet, under the carpet, under the floor, above the ceiling, behind the wallpaper, inside the sofa, inside a chair, inside the bed, inside the blankets, inside the walls, inside a rock, inside a stone, inside the room. Voided, 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 voided. Die the death, sentence to the death. The great Equalizer is the death. Beatrice is batted about the room by Delanor's red longsword like a leaf on the wind. Erika mocks Beatrice's pathetic state and says that with her detective's authority, she has the right to inspect all crime scenes. Having done so, she can say that this room has been uninhabited all along. Natsuhi was lying about having met Kinzo here last night.
Excellent Firefly reference, Kyle. Nice work.
Well done, Kyle. We're all proud of you.
Of course, it has to be the most traumatizing Firefly reference as well. It's thematically
Because it's
appropriate.
Umineko.
If you know, you know.
Exactly. It's thematically appropriate. Thank you, Hayley.
Your read of her last line as well is really good. I just throw some kudos on you right there. Don't you dare cut this bit out.
This is another like difference in localization thing that I think is interesting because y'all are playing the version of the game that has like a more updated translation, right? Or it's just a translation done by a different group of people?
It's a different group, yet it's hard to say whether
Yeah.
it's better or it's just different.
Right. Because the one that I'm watching on YouTube, she goes, check finished, check finished, check finished, instead of searched and voided. So
Check finish.
Yeah, that translation, it definitely has some of the more iconic lines because it was the one that was around initially.
Which translation? Check finished?
yes.
Check finished, and also with like Erika's stuff when she says like, I can't remember the entire line for Erika.
I'm gonna look it up because I know what you're talking about because it's very important to me. When you told me that was like an iconic line and that it's not the same in the version that everyone else is playing, I was like, oh, that's so interesting to me because it's so good.
Given this, then this level of reasoning is possible for Furuto Erika. What do you think, everyone?
This level of reasoning is possible for Furuto Erika. Yes.
God, that line.
Which is just like so good.
So good.
In the meta world, Peace Beatrice laments that she won't be able to fight with Battler again, and somehow it's almost as if the peace of Battler hears her plea. As Erika and the adult siblings all corner Natsuhi and pressure her to confess to Kinzo's non-existence, Battler gives us one of his signature Damadena, Zenzen Damadazes. If the mystery is third-rate, then so is the detective, Battler says. Using his own body, he will demonstrate how Kinzo could have escaped from this supposed closed room. Lying down in Kinzo's bed, he waits until Natsuhi believes he is asleep, and then she goes to check on the consumables in the bathroom. With Kinzo's study being more like a small house, it has several rooms. Thus, when Natsuhi goes into the bathroom, she loses sight of Kinzo/Battler. Using that opportunity, Battler begins to head towards the door of the study. But, because of the auto-lock, as Gertrude states, you cannot leave through the door without drawing Natsuhi's suspicion, and Natsuhi did not hear the sound of the door opening while in the room. Kinzo entering or exiting through the door will not be permitted. However, the door was never Battler's target. Instead, Battler runs and jumps towards the window. Cornelia attempts to block him with the red, "Windows are sealed from the inside," and Natsuhi did not help Kinzo escape. However, Battler counters with the blue, "I'm not saying Aunt Natsuhi helped Grandfather escape. What if Grandfather snuck out while keeping it a secret from Aunt Natsuhi?" Cornelia once again attempts to rebuff him, saying, "The window was locked from the inside." However, together with Kinzo, Battler gives the following blue truth. After Grandfather jumped out the window, Aunt Natsuhi probably noticed the slight draft. She then approached the window, realizing that it was wide open, and quickly closed and locked it. Natsuhi probably couldn't even imagine that I had slipped out the window. Yeah, so it's only natural that Aunt Natsuhi thought Grandfather was sleeping in bed. As a last-ditch effort, Cornelia tries a blue truth of her own. Be that as it may, this is the third floor. How could a wingless human escape from this window? To which Battler simply says, "This is the answer, and jumps out the window himself. As he falls to the rainy sky, Dlanor appears in front of Battler to congratulate him. Regardless of if he dies in this fall, he has proven that Kinzo could have escaped the study this way. However, as the Chief Inquisitor, she cannot allow him to escape without crossing swords with him personally. Drawing her red longsword and her blue short sword, Dlanor attacks with the following blue and red truth combination. Was the existence of Natsuhi's blind spot within the study depicted beforehand? If it was not, the theory is impermissible. Knox is 8th. It is forbidden for the case to be resolved with clues that are not presented. However, even Dlanor knows this cannot defeat Battler's theory. He counters in red. When we entered the study, its structure was mentioned clearly. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Kinzo's study was a small villa he had created inside the mansion. A study, a book archive, a place to sleep, and a bathroom and washroom. It was divided into multiple rooms. With that final blow, Battler is victorious. Dlanor crashes to the ground, and Battler gently lands in the courtyard. Battler calls out to Beatrice for her to jump down and escape. Kinzo takes the opportunity to safely vanish, and Beatrice jumps out the window down into Battler's arms. The two of them share a moment, and then Beatrice proclaims, "My riddle is yours alone, Shumia Battler. I won't let anyone else solve it."
This is just perfection. Like, the mirroring of, like, him being Kinzo and Beatrice jumping into his arms, and it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
But he's being controlled by Lambdadelta in this scene.
But that's why it's funny!
Okay. So this was, in our original recording, this was the part where Ben was like, Becca loved this, didn't she? And I was like, no, because it's not real. And then Kyle very helpfully said, yeah, but Lambdadelta kind of ships it. And I was like, actually, no, you know what? You're right. And I approve.
I love that that's all it took to change your mind. I love this from start. I was just like grinning and like it's cheesed up to the max and I absolutely adore it. Like him, this is the answer as he falls out the window. Just
I was totally with you, Hayley. Like in the moment I was like, this is the best day of my life. This is the greatest thing that could have ever happened. And then like a minute or two passed and I was like, wait a second. Lambdadelta's controlling this whole fuck. Like,
I think I liked it more because it wasn't actually Battler, right? Like it wasn't what Metaverse and real Battler would have done.
Yeah, I don't think he has the balls to like be that upfront about his feelings. Yeah.
No, he really doesn't.
Not only that, but remember episode 1? Where he was absolutely shit scared of flying and of the boat and of any kind of movement, not where he's not attached to the ground.
So true. Yeah.
Just no way he would have jumped out of a window.
But also, like, it is so... It's cliche, but in a very charming way. Like, because we've been waiting for it for so long, I think. And also... It's just objectively goofy. Like, he jumped out of a window and floated down like a cartoon character. Like, it's...
Yeah, there's even, like, gems sparkling in the background as well on, like, the CG.
It's fantastic. It's so good. And it really... Oh, man, you know all this back and forth of the red and blue, sometimes I struggled to, like, keep up with what each of them means and why this is important and all that stuff. And so this sort of truly goofy moment just really made me enjoy that red and blue that preceded it so much more.
Yeah.
I can look back on the whole scene fondly.
Agreed. Like, we definitely needed a moment of just, like, fan service, especially because this story got really heavy in the past couple of episodes. Like,
I guess it really depends on how much you value fan service. I'm not going to discredit it as a valuable thing in fictional stories and fandoms, but the previous entirety of the story doesn't really use fan service.
No, which is why I think that being so restrained and only deploying it now is really funny and fun.
Yeah, I will agree. It was fun.
It's not like it was out of context because the author used Lambdadelta to inject the funny to make it as believable as you could make this. You know?
When do we get the note that pieces on the board cannot act outside of their own personality of what they would do? It's knowing that, I enjoy this.
That was something I was positing for episodes, though. I do want to say, I've been saying this for months.
Sure, and I feel like the story does do enough work to, like, you didn't need that spelled out to you, right? It's pretty clear, but because of the way that this game works, the game board itself, it's important to have it spelled out. So knowing that we get that confirmation, I do like this more. That Battler can be this kind of suave, I don't even want to say player because that implies like relationship or hooking up. I mean literally player in this game, right? And how that relates to his charisma. I do like that a bit more as like, okay, yes, he's Lambdadelta's piece in this context, but it still fits. And even if you go a step further and say that the context is that Beatrice here and now is a piece of Lambdadelta, which is still something that's really not clear in this moment, that they still must stay true. I feel like knowing that Lambdadelta has boundaries for how these pieces can interact adds a lot more to this specific moment. And for that reason, I do like it. But when I first saw this, I was like, feels a bit forced on Lambdadelta's part to be kind of like elbow into the ribs of Beatrice to be like, you like him.
100% that's what this is, which is why I both love and hate it.
Back up in Kinzo's study, Erika is desperately trying to convince everyone that it's impossible for a human to jump out of a third-story window unharmed, especially not the elderly Kinzo. However, all the family members and servants just say, I wouldn't put it past Kinzo. Down in the courtyard, Beatrice vanishes as those in the study look down and see that Battler is all right. Dlanor reappears one last time to ask Battler to deliver his finishing blow of blue truth. Ashimi Kinzo escaped from the study through the window when Aunt Natsuhi couldn't see him, and Natsuhi didn't notice and locked the window. This way, Aunt Natsuhi can see Grandfather go to bed at 11 o'clock, and Grandfather can escape from the study without contradicting the lock on the window or the door sealed by the receipt. I proved through my demonstration that this escape was physically possible. Therefore, this battle is over. However, instead of running Dlanor through with that blue wedge, Battler simply tells Dlanor that Beto's games are no walk in the park. It's doubtful whether the conventions of the mystery genre even apply here. Your swordsmanship isn't bad, but you should be a bit more flexible in your thinking. Amidst the rain and thunder, the successor of the Ushimiya family faced the people staring down from the study and spread his arms wide. Welcome to Beato's and my game. We receive you with open arms, Furuto Erika. In the witch's smoking room, Lambdadelta and Berncastle both mock and bully Erika for her pathetic performance. In the Golden Land, Battler sits with doll Beatrice and Virgilia, contemplating everything that has happened so far. Suddenly, someone else arrives through the maze of golden roses, Dlanor. Virgilia, who is apparently an old friend of Dlanor's from heaven, who would battle each other over interpretations of heavenly studies, welcomes her into the gazebo to have tea with them. Dlanor, having only interacted with Peace Battler and Peace Beatrice, introduces herself to them. Virgilia makes them all tea with her magic, and Dlanor comments that she isn't so rude as to complain about the way her tea is served. While she personally believes that there is a tea set hidden in the shadows that Virgilia is using in secret, Knox's Ninth allows the tale to record the interpretation that it was made with magic. While magic that hides the result in darkness is evil, magic that merely conceals the process is not necessarily so. Dlanor says that her foe is evil, not magic itself. This causes Battler to consider that magic itself might just be a white lie. However, Virgilia says that it's more accurate to call it an embellishment. After all, giving a child a piece of candy by pulling it out from their ear makes them enjoy it much more than if you had just taken it out of your pocket. Dlanor says that it would be boorish to try and solve and debunk the mystery of a child's happiness. Battler is surprised. Dlanor says that while in her personal views she might find witches pitiable, she will still condemn them mercilessly when on the job as an inquisitor. While in the end, the result that she executes witches is unchanged. Battler and Virgilia agree that what is in her heart makes all the difference. Understanding the heart is the first step towards magic's true nature, and Virgilia can feel that Battler is finally beginning to understand it. Dlanor thanks Battler for his mercy that he showed her at the end of the battle. But Battler says that it wasn't really him that did that, since Lambdadelta was still controlling his piece at that time. However, Dlanor says that pieces can't do things that are impossible for them, and they specialize in actions appropriate for their original personality. His piece's actions were certainly something that Battler himself was capable of, and for that she is grateful. However, in their next fight, once Battler's controlling his own piece again, they will both give it everything they've got. However, it is for that reason that Dlanor feels she must apologize to Battler. In their last fight, she was unable to give it her all. Lambdadelta, the game master, had forced Dlanor to throw the fight. After all, it's already been established in the red that Kinzo is dead at the starting time for all games. While Dlanor could not have said that directly, it would have violated Knox's second. It is forbidden for supernatural agencies to be employed as a detective technique. Cornelia could have given the red truth. The window was never opened after it started raining. For some reason, the game master Lambdadelta had prevented them from using that trump card and establishing that Kinzo does not exist. For some nefarious reason, Lambdadelta and Berncastle are conspiring together. Having shared the information that she had come to give him, Dlanor takes her leave. Dlanor once again says that while they may fight as enemies on the game board, know in her heart she is always neutral. However, even she finds Furuto Erika to be evil and obnoxious, and she warns Battler to take care. Dlanor laments being used as a tool for such evil, but Virgilia reminds her that even though Berncastle may be the one who called her here, Dlanor could only have arrived here in the Golden Land if Beatrice willed it. Once Dlanor leaves, Battler wonders then if someone can only arrive in this Golden Land if Beatrice wishes it, how Angie could have made it here at the end of the last game. Was that too all part of Beatrice's will? Battler sits and wonders exactly what it is Beatrice wanted him to learn from this meeting with Dlanor.
And I feel that's the first real step towards him flipping the chessboard, so to speak. Right? Why did Beatrice allow these people? And why does she want me to meet with Dlanor? And I think I know why, based on upcoming episodes, so I won't get into it now. But like again, like the whole thing early in episode 5 is him trying to understand Beatrice's moves. What's her motivation? Why would she do these things? Right? We as the viewer have a bit more perspective from other characters that we can kind of fit into that puzzle. But it is satisfying to see Battler start to work toward it.
Is it satisfying? I just found him. The fact he has to have it spelled out to him is really frustrating.
He's canonically incompetent, so...
Yes, exactly. This is just another Battler is incompetent moment.
He's also an 18-year-old boy, let's remember. He's an idiot.
Stop rationalizing it.
First of all, is he? Is he?
Wow.
Presents as such, but there's something more going on with this guy.
Maybe 19-year-old boy.
We should really investigate the trans Battler theory.
I even to that, I'm gonna say, is he? Is he? We don't know. We don't know.
So far, yes.
He certainly acts like it. I will say that. But I it's weird for me to fight against that take from Hayley when I was earlier saying the whole romance thing being spelled out is kind of like, come on, trust your audience a little bit, right? I don't know. I like seeing character growth from him.
This isn't the audience, though. This is Battler.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but like in most stories, the protagonist is meant to be a stand-in for the audience. I think this story does do a good job of kind of pushing away from that in several ways, I guess. But it still, at the core, does. The story expects you to keep up with the pace of Battler's understanding at a minimum.
Yeah. I do like this take on magic, though. Just back to the first bit of your read there, Kyle.
I am so glad that you said that, because I have a note to this
you do?
Specifically. Yes. So, like, Battler asking if magic is like a white lie and Virgilia calling it an embellishment, to me, really harkens back to when Beato, I think just earlier in this episode, in episode 5, because I'm pretty sure it's Peace Beato who says it. She's like, we're the team of illusions. So, like, an illusion is a white lie. We all know that, like, some trickery is happening when you're watching a magician perform illusions, right? We don't think it's legitimate magic in real life, but it might as well be magic, right?
Yeah. It's like Santa Claus, right? Like, it just adds another...
Spoilers for Santa Claus.
Stop. Santa Claus is real. It just adds another layer of something special to the holidays, right? It just, I don't know, it just elevates it in a way. And I really like the take that the way that some witches use magic is just to elevate an experience for other people. And I just think that that's lovely. Like we saw with Angie and Maria's journal, that was making Angie not feel alone, like in episode 4, and with the candy wrapper even tied on that's like, this is almost it tied back to that for me, with the candy wrapper tied on the rose tree, because I think, did George give a piece of candy or I don't know where it came from, but
yeah, I think so.
I don't know, there's some really nice, almost masterful things in this that really make you think about earlier things that have happened.
Can I ask you a question, Hayley?
Yes.
You have to pick, right? Like hypothetically, if you have to pick right now.
Oh no.
Team Magic, Team Mystery. Where are you at?
What pick for what purpose?
Do you think that magic is the answer, or that there's a rational explanation for everything? Because you can talk about how you like this interpretation of magic all you want, but if you ultimately decide on Team Mystery, then Team Magic is just a coping mechanism.
Coping's so harsh, but yeah.
That's such a negative take. Oh my god.
No. Coping mechanism is not a negative take. coping mechanisms are very important for people who go through trauma. And it is a way to rationalize what you've been through to get to a healthy state of mind. Especially if you're someone who's in Maria's shoes in a team mystery solution where this is a kid who's been traumatized. This is a kid who's been neglected.
Yeah.
And the idea of magic, whether Beatrice is an imaginary friend or otherwise, is still important for a 10-year-old to have some sort of anchor. There is value to that. There's real, tangible value to that that is not necessarily damaging, but it can be, depending on the rest of her life and upbringing.
Fair.
But in that context, you kind of have to change your perception of what magic means in this world to this little girl, to this family. And at that point, you don't really get to anchor into, I like this magic system. It is, I appreciate how this traumatized person managed themselves or found people to cling on to or found like-minded individuals who have been through, like, you know, that's kind of... So if you have to pick right now, which side do you lean toward? I think I kind of know your dilemma, but I still want to hear your opinion.
It's a story, right? Like, if this was reality, then I would be on team, obviously, rational mystery. But it's a story. I'm open to it still being magic. Like,
okay. I have a great follow-up question for you, and you're gonna hate this.
Wait.
Okay, go ahead.
My comment here, though, was that I like this take on magic. I like this interpretation of magic. I'm not saying that I like magic as a system in this story. I liked this specific take about magic and applying it to the real world. And I completely hear and agree with what you're saying about the coping mechanisms and the traumatization and all of that. And maybe it's born of that. But, like, I can't choose a team for a piece of fiction. I struggle with that. Like, I just... It doesn't matter. So why would I pick a team? I just want to see where it goes.
Just let me ask you this. Because you said if this was real world, it's clearly team mystery. Does that not also put you in the exact same shoes that Battler has been in from the start of the story? Which means if you cannot rationalize team magic, that you are red text incompetent. And how do you feel about that? And how would you feel about people looking in on you and saying, clearly you're a bad character and you're poorly competent in your own right?
I mean, that's fine. I'm only human. I'm flawed. Like,
all right, you're not an 18 or 19-year-old boy. All right, your ego is stronger than that. All right, fair enough.
I really don't care if people think I'm incompetent at solving this. Like, that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to enjoy it. Like,
all right,
that's it.
All right.
That was a very interesting tangent, and I loved listening to it. I am gonna say a bunch of stuff right now that maybe nobody else has comments on, in which case, Kyle, I think my favorite part of this entire chapter reading is the part where, like right after the part that Hayley loves, where they give the explanation for magic, essentially, is Dlanor is talking about how much she pities witches, because her enemy is evil, not magic necessarily. But Virgilia and Battler are the ones who say the feeling matters, like the fact that you have empathy for these witches that you're destroying matters, which I think is something that gets overlooked all the time, just like in general, in life. Like, intention is important in a lot of things, and results don't always match your intention, which is very hard to deal with sometimes. But I just really loved that that was included. And also, understanding the heart is the first step toward finding the essence of magic. That love is the one element of the universe. We've been over this so many times. Love is the one true element. Guys, this was a romance all along.
It wasn't said in red, though, so...
Get on board. Get on board. But then I'm also just gonna... I'm just gonna read... I had, like 7 to 8 questions in succession in my notes when I was reading this episode, because I take notes as I'm reading to, like, go back to what I was thinking at the time, which was... Dlanor threw the match somehow because the window of red truth became unusable. Lambda interference ? So was trapping Bern a cover story ? Why did they need Beato to create this world? Are they both trying to become endless? Is this about to become good versus evil, but the weapons are fantasy and mystery? Why did Beato want Battler not to outright hate Dlanor? What's going on?
Pick me. I have an answer.
Go ahead, Capelli. Tell me all of the answers.
Because it keeps the game interesting, and they're allergic to boredom. I think that's genuinely just the answer.
Mhm.
I don't think there's a more nuanced answer than that.
I do wonder. Because why Beato? Why this world? Why did Lambda need to get Beato under her thumb before starting all of this? You know what I mean? Like,
so we can kind of go back a little bit to the memoirs of the Lambdadelta story that we read.
Mhm.
It kind of shows that Lambdadelta visiting someone who was like beseeching acknowledgement of their witchdom, right? And one of the things that like Lambda says in that story is that this child had a grimoire, a magic system that was so robust that it could create like infinite numbers of worlds, right? And that's why she'd agreed to. That was, I think she said it's better than her magic system even, and that it could even rise to like the level of the gods, the creators someday.
Okay, interesting. Gonna have to read that one again. Because my first instinct, I mean, if Beato is an endless witch and can create things endlessly, I mean, we've seen that that's kind of like her power that she was imparting on Maria in previous episodes, or I mean, something that Maria maybe even shared. So it could be either one of them. It could be Beato or Maria. I have to. Interesting. Interesting. You've given me a lot to think about, Kyle.
That's my job. All right, well, we are about to get into a very different segment of the reading. This is definitely like a red and blue truth dense little section. It's kind of its own beast. But I think it's still very interesting. There's a lot kind of subtle stuff going on in this part that I think it's kind of emblematic of. I'm saying this ahead of time so that while we're reading it, y'all can think about this. I think a lot of what episode the Answer Arcs tries to do is to kind of like give you examples of ways to look at the story. And I think this is a very technical lens to look at the story that we're about to get into. This is like a pure closed room mystery, like just blue truths kind of section, showing off like the game that you can play with these tools. And I think it's interesting to try and like solve this section because it can give you some really interesting hints about how someone might construct a mystery using this tool set.
This is a beefy episode. I didn't realize quite how much reading there was in this because I read so much in Manga.
Yeah, this was a long section for sure. In the meta world, Fruta Erika takes out the frustrations of her loss in Kinzo's study on Cornelia by repeatedly making her fall on her face. Gertrude attempts to speak in Cornelia's defense, and so Erika orders her to take Cornelia's place. However, before she can begin torturing Gertrude, Dlanor appears and makes her subordinates vanish. Dlanor offers to take the punishment for them, but Erika refuses as she would be unable to hurt the unfeeling, impervious Dlanor. However, her anger has finally abated, and she is ready to continue her deductions. Summoning Gertrude and Cornelia again, she has them reconstruct the crime scenes for her. However, before she begins working on the first Twilight, she recalls there was a mystery presented even before that. A mysterious letter that appeared in the hallway when no one was around to leave it. Gertrude and Cornelia reconstruct the dining hall at that time, and give the locations of the various family members at that time in red. Before the family conference, Erika, George, Jessica, Maria, Nanjo, Goda, and Kumasawa left the mansion and moved to the guest house. Of those who remain, only Kraus, Natsuhi, and Genji were in the second floor corridor, while all others were in the dining hall. Even so, Erika says that there's no guarantee that the letter was actually placed at the stroke of midnight. However, when Shannon and Cannon arrived to serve tea mere minutes before the letter was discovered, multiple witnesses confirmed that there had been nothing suspicious in the hallway. Erika suspects that one of the people in the hall simply snuck down and placed the letter there. As for the knock, she says that it's possible that the sound of a knock was misheard or somehow created remotely. Begging her master's approval, we then cut to the witch's smoking room, where Berncastle asks Lambdadelta to check Erika's work. Lambda says in red that Kraus, Natsuhi, and Genji did not even touch that letter. Berncastle then suspects the last person into the room, like Cannon, could have inconspicuously dropped the letter then, to which Lambda responds, not a single person in the dining hall. No, there's a simpler way to say it. Among all those inside the mansion at midnight, not a single one of them placed the letter in the hallway. Berncastle and Erika then suppose that someone outside of the mansion when the letter was found could have set up the letter to get placed there remotely, for example by having it stuck to the bottom of the tea serving cart. While such an argument might work for the letter, Lambda wonders if the knock will be so easy to figure out. She gives the following read. Neither Kraus nor Natsuhi nor Genji knocked. This isn't the limited meaning of them knocking on the door, okay? It means they didn't use a pillar to transmit the sound or push a play button on a cassette tape they'd recorded or created that knocked sound by any other means. Of course, this includes all direct, indirect, intentional, coincidental, and unintentional means. Birdcastle repeats Erika's blue that maybe someone other than Klaus, Natsuhi, or Genji made that knock or else a sound that could be misidentified as knock. Gertrude, Cornelia, and Dlanor then give the following reds. 2400, except for Klaus, Natsuhi, and Genji in the second floor corridor, and all the people in the dining hall. No other humans existed inside the mansion. In addition to Klaus, Natsuhi, and Genji, none of those in the dining hall knocked. Where knocking includes all direct, indirect, intentional, unintentional, and coincidental events that could create a knocking sound. In other words, it's impossible for anyone who was in the mansion to have been the source of a knocking sound. In this case, anyone also includes any people who might have gone undetected or unobserved. This seems to leave only the guest house group, and so Erika theorizes that one of them could have created a recording of a knock and set it to play at midnight. However, this combined with Erika's theory about the letter's falling point being random wouldn't be conducive to creating the impression of a person who isn't there delivering a letter. Lambda then updates her read about the placement of the letter. No one in the mansion placed the letter in the hallway. That goes for every conceivable possibility, directly, indirectly, intentionally, coincidentally, and unintentionally. This means that none of them could have used any kind of indirect method like the serving cart as Erika had speculated. Birdcastle requests Lambda repeat in red who all was actually outside of the mansion at midnight, and after being offered a bribe, Lambda does so. At midnight, only Erika, George, Jessica, Maria, Nanjo, Goda, and Kumasawa existed outside of the mansion. Erika then tries to claim the letter was stuck to the ceiling. However, Gertrude and Cornelia immediately disprove this with the reds. The letter never existed on the ceiling of the hallway, and know that the letter never touched the serving cart, and it was impossible for anyone outside of the mansion to influence anything inside the mansion after the start of the family conference. This leaves Erika with only the vague idea that someone outside the mansion must have set up some kind of gimmick before the family conference even started. But, because she can't think of a specific trick, her blue truth isn't valid. In desperation, Erika returns to the mystery of the knock, where her current theory that someone outside of the mansion used a cassette tape to play a sound of a knock is still valid. However, Bern and Lambda continue to bully Erika, and Lambda gives the devastating red truth. None of the characters would misidentify a knocking sound. Misidentifying a knocking sound means this: they would not mistake a sound very similar to a knocking sound for a real knocking sound. Hitting a pillar to make something similar to a knocking sound is no good. When you record a knocking sound on a cassette tape and play it back, it becomes the sound of a tape with a knocking sound on it, and not a knocking sound. So that's no good either. In other words, all of them would correctly distinguish a knocking sound of something truly hitting the door, and they definitely wouldn't mishear it. It's totally impossible that any sound except hitting that door directly would be misinterpreted as a knock. Erika's left without any way for anyone to have made the knocking sound. Berncastle posits that an automatic knocking device could have been used, but Lambda quickly slams the door on this mystery with her last bit of red. To knock means someone hitting a door with their hand. They heard a knock at the same time as the clock struck midnight. Everyone inside the dining hall definitely heard it at that time, and none of them would misinterpret a knocking sound. Kraus, Natsuhi, and Genji had no involvement in any knocking. No one else existed inside the mansion, and a knock refers to the action of standing directly in front of the door and hitting it with a hand. Thoroughly stumped, Berncastle laughs together with Lambdadelta, thoroughly enjoying her puzzle. Erika tries to say that she will definitely solve it. Berncastle aggressively puts her in her place. If Erika can't manage to step up her game and start winning, Berncastle will cast her into the darkest depths of oblivion and forget about her.
I don't have a big thing to say. Just that this whole mystery of where did this letter come from, who knocked at the door, how did it happen, is currently the single mystery in the entirety of Umineko that I don't have a fucking clue. I am completely stumped by it at this particular moment.
Huh.
Yeah, it's like a really good one, actually. It's so funny because it's like completely irrelevant.
Is it not just that whoever picked up the letter didn't actually pick it up off the floor in the hallway? They had it on them anyway?
Let's see.
That is like a rationale I have for like Nanjo finding Jessica's body in episode 2. So I wouldn't actually be too surprised to be like, that's the answer.
Because the red specifically says nobody placed it in the hallway, which means that it wasn't placed in the hallway.
Yeah, not a single one of them placed the letter in the hallway. Yes, you're correct.
So it could just be on their person.
The letter may also not exist, and it may all be hearsay.
Ooh, okay.
And that still doesn't excuse the knocking, but we do, to really theorize about this, we have to talk about more stuff we get later in episode 5, which I just can't get into yet.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know, this whole section just made me think, okay, so somebody had the letter on them, and I couldn't remember who it was that picked up the letter, but it's like, okay, whoever picked up the letter just had it on them. There
is precedent in episode 1 when they're all piled into Kinzo's study, and then Natsuhi finds that letter that could only have been placed by, anybody in the room except Battler and George.
Mm-hmm.
So, I feel like maybe there's some sort of allusions from one side to the other.
Yeah. And I think it's not a woman because we're not allowed to have real size pockets.
It's true, especially in this time era. Forget
in
it.
the 80s, no pockets.
Yeah.
Smooth silhouettes only.
You know, remember the part where Eva was suspiciously letter-shaped, like a Tom and Jerry cartoon? Becca, do you have anything you want to say?
Not really. Shockingly, I don't really have much notes on this section of the reading. And as you mentioned, this part is really dry. So,
Yeah, it is.
like, at this point, I'm so less interested in the mystery of the whodunit and the what's going on the island than I am in what the fuck are Bern and Lambda's actual motives are. Like, what are their motives? And I don't know. Maybe it is just that they're fucking bored and they're, traveler witches or whatever, and they needed something to happen. But I don't know. The fact that we're reading this story makes me believe that there might be something a little more to it than that.
That's fair.
So, yeah, all of this stuff, I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever. This is a necessary evil of the mystery that we have to go through all this stuff so granularly, but it's not what I'm actually interested in.
Yeah, because this is just Lambdadelta being like, I want to make a bonus puzzle that has nothing to do with anything that is based on the plot. It's just a thing that could happen, theoretically.
Yeah.
And we already know that Lambda and Bern are both fucking cheaters. Like, in very specific ways. So, we already know that Lambda has made up whatever this voice is on the other end of Natsuhi's phone line claiming to be her son from 19 years ago. So, what is this? Is this just another made-up thing? In what context could it be made up? And in what context does it have to have relevance to the rest of what's going on?
I will say there is precedent there that if this is a real piece on the board, that it is somebody acting within what their true character would allow.
Sure.
Right? I feel like that's like the only avenue you can imagine that this voice isn't a completely made-up thing. It is a piece of Lambdadelta being manipulated by her. Is it real or not? Like, at this current juncture, I would err on the side of no, but...
Are you talking about the voice on the phone?
Yes.
Okay.
Like, did those scenes actually happen or not?
Gosh, like, so much work is done in this episode to... We talked about it in the start of the episode, right? The idea that there is no Kinzo that approves of Natsuhi. But to Natsuhi, that's still real. So, in that context, it is very feasible that this is not a completely made-up thing, but to Natsuhi, it actually happened.
Like, she's so stressed from the...
Is she mentally unwell? Is there actually someone speaking to her? And it kind of leads into my suspicion of Genji a little bit being the only point of contact she ever receives. If any, not all of them involve him, but the ones that do, like, there's no other servant that brings this phone call to her. It's only ever Genji, right? So, like, there's something you could say about it. I'm not sure.
My point being that we know Lambda and Bern are both cheaters. So to what extent is this letter and knocking situation a version of Lambda cheating? I don't really have an answer for that right now. It could be, like, completely valid. It could be, like, a completely legal move. But, like, based on our limited information right now, I truly have no fucking clue. It just feels so... It's like what you just said, Kyle, a minute ago. It's just Lambda throwing a random little fucking puzzle in here to stump everyone and get them hung up on it. And to me, that feels a little bit like a red herring. Like she's trying to distract us from something more important.
Back on the game board, everyone's having a sullen breakfast despite Gota's wonderful cooking. Suddenly, Erika stands up and declares that she has figured out how Battler survived the jump from the third floor. At the ladder from the courtyard and saw Rudolph-san go up it to the third-story window. You closely observed the structure of the outer wall and realized that by cleverly using the rain gutters and other handholds, it would be possible to descend from the courtyard from the third-floor window. You didn't jump down. You used the rain gutters so that you clambered down the outer wall like a loser. It may have looked like you jumped down all dramatically, but it was an illusion. All you actually did was jump out and grab desperately onto the rain gutter. Of course, Battler could care less if she figured out how he actually climbed down, since all she was trying to prove was that Kinzo could have used the same method to escape his study. Erika begins screaming for her master to acknowledge her victory, and a lightning bolt suddenly lands just outside, and Erika collapses like a puppet whose strings have just been cut. Afterwards, she is suddenly back to acting completely normal, causing everyone to question if they'd actually seen her start raving in the first place.
Do you think there's, like, moments like this in the first half of the game that we, the reader, are just never seen or are shown.
What do you mean?
Like, in the sense, like this is very much a don't look behind the curtain sort of moment.
Where Battler functionally says, yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Well, I mean, like, even with a character collapses and then it's kind of, like, undone as far as the perspective of the other pieces on the game board, do we think that everything we're shown in episode 4, that sort of thing happens, but it's like, oh, we, the viewer, are not informed of it?
I don't know, this is kind of a weird case, because Erika's kind of a weird meta character.
Yeah. And I feel like if we apply Knox's rules and we consider that we as readers are invited to solve this, we are detectives. And so if we haven't been shown it, it didn't happen.
Only if it's relevant.
True.
Like, if it is, if it did happen, it's not relevant to the mystery at hand, but it could be a thing. Like, it's a question of how Beatrice runs a game versus Lambda / Bern Castle a little bit.
Later in the parlor, Erika begins questioning everyone about their alibis for the first twilight. According to Eva, Battler returned to the guest house at 3 a.m., and then the rest of the adults finally split up 30 minutes after that. In Purgatorio, Runaway, Beatrice, and Gap discuss the status of the game, and then go into the void that no human can ever enter to check on the corpses of the first twilight. Virgilia, who has been absent for most of the game so far, arrives to get an update on the status of the game. On seeing the 5 corpses with their necks cut open, she says in red that anyone looking at George, Jessica, Maria, Rosa, or Genji's corpses can confirm at a glance that they are dead. Beatrice is surprised that Virgilia would just go ahead and say in red something they have been trying to hide up until this point, but confirms with her own red. At a glance, anyone can confirm that these corpses are dead, so it's absolutely impossible that they are just people playing dead. Gap is confused, but Runaway is sure that Virgilia must be planning something to Beatrice's benefit. Virgilia asks Beatrice why she had the corpses disappear, and Beatrice explains that it was a part of her goal of protecting Natsuhi. She needed to sow doubt that they were actually dead in the first place. Even though so many people had seen the wounds that no human could survive, without the red truth, they could never be 100% certain. Beatrice also informs Virgilia about the man from 19 years ago, and how he had threatened across his life to order Natsuhi to hide in a guest room at 1 p.m. Back in the parlor, Natsuhi pretends to take offense at Erika's suspicions, and uses it as an excuse to leave the room. Natsuhi arrives at the specified room, and, finding it unlocked, reluctantly enters. At first, she locks the room from the inside, so as to guarantee that no one can enter and find her hiding, but realizes that since the room was unlocked when she entered, someone finding it suddenly locked might cause them to break in and search when they otherwise wouldn't bother. Undoing the locks, Natsuhi decides to simply do as the man commanded and hide in the closet for an hour. Sitting alone in the dark closet, Natsuhi thinks back to how she had wanted Jessica do something similar as punishment. Was this man from 19 years ago trying to make her reflect on her mistakes? Or had she simply been lured somewhere remote so they can kill her while she was vulnerable? Natsuhi thinks back to when she had found that card marked Autumn in her room left by that man. She suspects that a servant must be helping that man, allowing him to use their master key. How did he know that her favorite season was autumn? Natsuhi then remembers that one day, long ago, she had in fact told Shannon that autumn was her favorite of the 4 seasons. Natsuhi is furious that Shannon, a servant who had been serving the Shirimiya family for over 10 years, must be part of this. However, because she had never told anyone except Shannon that she likes autumn, Natsuhi now had a lead on fighting back against this man from 19 years ago. Suddenly, Natsuhi hears someone opening the door to the guest room. Hideyoshi, apparently taking a break from Erika's inquisition in the parlor, seems to have come to this guest room to rest. He locks the door, sets the chain, and even closes the shutters to secure the room. When he lies down on the bed and begins crying for his dead son, Natsuhi wonders if Hideyoshi might actually have decided to rest in this room by chance, and if it's worth risking Krause's life to reveal herself and seek his help. Natsuhi thinks about Jessica's death, and how, now that Battler has found the gold, he will likely take the headship as well. When the inheritance issues all get revealed, the Shirimiya family's honor will be destroyed, and the true headship will end with Natsuhi herself as the final head. Suddenly, Hideyoshi jumps up and confronts someone who has somehow entered the room and started attacking him. Natsuhi panics, unsure if she should risk Krause's safety by defying that man's orders and helping Hideyoshi. Then, Natsuhi can suddenly hear Eva at the door trying to get in despite the chain lock, and crying for her husband, who now sounds to be dying. When Eva runs off to get help, the room is suddenly left in silence. With no sign of even the culprit remaining, Eva then returns to the door, with everyone in tow. Kodo uses a bolt cutter to cut the chain lock, and everyone runs into the room to find Hideyoshi dead, face down on the bed with a stake stuck deep into his back. Eva pulls out the stake and cries over Hideyoshi's body. Kyrie has to go to check on the bathroom, and notes that the doors and windows of this room were completely sealed. Erika then finally arrives in the scene, having immediately rushed outside to make sure that the windows had never been opened. Kyrie informs Erika of the events of the crime and the state of the crime scene, while Eva argues with Dr. Nanjo to have Hideyoshi's body moved to the parlor so the culprit doesn't steal it like they did the others. With Erika's permission, Eva wraps Hideyoshi's body up in a sheet that rapidly turns red, and Rudolph and Goda carry him back to the parlor. While the culprit likely got the master key off of Genji's body, it still doesn't explain how they must have gotten through the chain-locked door. Kyrie warns everyone that they must all move together from now on. As everyone begins to head back to the parlor, Erika stops and notices the conveniently human-sized closet in the corner of the room, and begins to head towards it. However, Battler grabs her hand and tells her to stay with the group. Let's go, Miss Detective. Didn't they teach you to stick with the group on school field trips? Erika shrugs and grins. Well, whenever I go traveling, someone always dies. Annoyed, Erika returns to the parlor with the others, but with her photographic memory, she can always recreate the crime scene in her mind later at her leisure.
This made me wonder who was in the closet the first time we read the first episode.
Which closet? Oh, you mean when Canon dies?
The one that Natsuhi is hiding in. No, because the very first episode...
Oh yes, Eva and Hideyoshi die in their guest room, yeah.
In the first episode, they do a very thorough search of that room.
You've reviewed it more recently than I have, so I can't say.
Also, it's not the same room.
It might be.
Eva and Hideyoshi in episode 1 died on the second floor. This is the first floor.
Oh, do they? Ooh, I can't say for sure on that, yeah.
This room is just some random room that seems to be randomly chosen on the first floor, whereas in the first episode, it's very much, this is Eva and Hideyoshi's room up on the second floor.
That's not the impression I get.
I'm not certain that's true, but...
Really? Well, maybe I'm wrong. But I don't think it super matters, at least in the context of this conversation.
Sure. But I think it is reasonable to assume that this might be a callback to how that crime could have occurred, if we're thinking of first and fifth episodes as, like, being paired.
Yeah.
God, I would absolutely hate if the answer to Evan Hideyoshi's death is just, oh, there was someone in the closet and you guys didn't look hard enough.
Why? People make mistakes all the time.
I mean, that's the nature of a mystery, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, even now having gone back through the synopsis of episode 1, like, that's just not, it's very much presented in a way that's, yes, we checked every part of that room, and we, the viewer, absent of having a visual representation of the blueprints or the layout of the room, just have to take it on good faith that, yeah, they say they did a good search, so I believe they did a good search. And if you just come back 60 hours, 80 hours of reading later and say, no, they didn't, that's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on, again, we have to talk about Battler's perspective in that episode. If Battler was there when they searched, then yeah, you can be certain that they searched.
All right, yeah, and in that context, I'd be more okay with, like, that being the answer.
I just don't remember. Like, it's been a while since I've looked at the episode 1 murders.
Hold on, I have a bunch of notes that's just titled "I will solve Umineko," and I've only got episode 1 done.
Yeah, who's the killer in episode 1, Capelli?
Genji.
Oh, okay.
Is my current top suspect. I have 3 top suspects, and Genji is top of the list.
I think Genji's more of a bottom, but sure. That was a joke for Ben.
Absolutely not. He's a switch. I guess I just kind of summarized it. I didn't lay out my suspicions of each theory.
Okay. Well, I mean, we're planning to get into that in more detail at the end of episode 5, so we'll get to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Finally able to leave the closet, Natsuhi trepidatiously steps out of the guest room and into the hall. With no one around, she decides to head back to her room with the expectation that someone would likely come soon to inform her of Hideyoshi's death. Unfortunately, just as she is climbing the main staircase in the lobby, Furuta Erika spots her. When Erika points out that Natsuhi's room is on the second floor, Natsuhi makes an excuse that she was returning to the parlor. She'd just forgotten if she had locked the door to her room or not. Erika tries to suss out if Natsuhi knows about Hideyoshi's death when she shouldn't, but eventually decides to just inform her and have her come join everyone in the parlor. As Natsuhi enters the parlor and sees the crying faces of everyone looking at her with suspicion, she finally realizes that this was the man from 19 years ago's plan all along. However, with Kraus held captive, even now she could do nothing more than endure and wait until the police arrive to exonerate her. Erika has called for an assembly to lay out the details of the crimes. As the detective, no peace can refuse her this right. As Shannon and Cannon close and lock the door to the parlor, both Erika and Berncastle announce that this is checkmate. We cut to the witch's smoking room. Lambda is impressed that Bern is ready to try and solve the game already, even though it's only the second twilight. In Purgatorio, Peace, Beatrice, and the rest of the magic crew are anxious to see how this will all play out. In the Golden Land, we see that Battler has left to join the game now that everything has caught up to that point. Rogelia sits with doll Beatrice and says that since the end of the 4th game, Battler has been given all the tools he needs to reach the truth. However, because of his weak side, the game would repeat 100 times and he will never solve it. Similarly for Beatrice, even with 100 more games, she will still not arrive at the answer she seeks. While Lambdadelta and Berncastle's trampling of their game may be painful, it's necessary to bring an end to Battler's naivete and to Beatrice's hesitation. And that is why Beatrice brought the two of them into this game, to end the stalemate and bring about either victory or defeat. Rogelia has guided Battler through Purgatory and brought him here to Beatrice at its peak. Now she must choose whether to take his hand and rise up into heaven, or embrace him and fall into hell. It is now time for Beatrice to open Pandora's box. No matter how afraid she might be of the result, is the cat in the box alive or dead? Time has now come to check. If the cat is dead, hold a funeral for it quickly, and have it rise to heaven. If the cat is alive, feed it quickly, and give it all of your affection. Whether it is alive or dead, your cat box eternally desecrates the cat. Those two have brought you the key to the box that you were too afraid to open. The time has come for you to die. I hope that your heart will be stopped by the hand of the person you desire.
How do you hate this, Capelli? It's so good.
That conversation from earlier on was mostly talking about just like the battle in Kinzo's study. Like, this is good.
No, the hand that your heart will be stopped by the hand of the person you desire. You said it was too heavy-handed.
Oh, right. It is a little heavy-handed. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's just a tone shift. It's just so direct. And a lot of this story is very indirect, a lot of read between the lines. So to get this so direct, and I guess it's like a little biased because for us, it is the end segment of the reading. I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe if you continued on to the next bit, you wouldn't feel like that. Which is how I read it.
Yeah, Capelli classically wants more vagaries in his answer arcs.
I mean, like it's weird because, like, on one hand, it doesn't feel like this is a big answer, but it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so like, even like I guess like I'm just saying when I said I didn't really like it was just my initial interpretation of it, and then here later on, it has somewhat changed, right? To like we're looking at it in hindsight and we're reading back, and so I can kind of take it with a bit more of context clues to like it a bit more. But you know, when we first got to it, it's just like that is just really spelling out their relationship. I don't know. It's something that I think I would appreciate more if I was just binging through the whole story at my own pace.
Fair enough.
So it's not that I don't like it. It's just that it is just a shift from what the author has made me consider to be their normal.
Okay, that's fair. I kind of like this as a moment for Virgilia to be stepping into her sort of the role that she's been cast in as almost parent of Beatrice. Like, okay, I've let you have your fun now, but you know, you got to get your shit together and actually open the box now because this is becoming cruel. Like, it's I don't know. I enjoyed this last exchange for sure.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. In the scope of episode 5, I really do enjoy pretty much everything that happens here in the meta garden.
Yes,
especially when Dlanor shows up in the scene.
Yeah,
all of that. And because, like, I think we mentioned this a few episodes ago, where my real passion with these stories is really character-driven moments that's done really well. Less so the theme in the world, though that's obviously a big part of a lot of storytelling that I like. But if the characters are not well done, I'm less engaged. And everything in the meta gazebo, meta garden shows a lot of great characterization, even for Beatrice, who's kind of frozen, because you're seeing her a lot more through Battler's nuanced perception of who she is as a person, which I think then leads into a lot better understanding of how they work as a relationship, whether you're talking the romantic sense or just as two people intertwined.
Yeah.
And that's, again, something I really appreciate about us doing this podcast, is I'm able to think back on that and make it's easier for me to understand who they are as people. And it's something I really appreciate about this author and how they write their shit. It's just good stuff.
Yeah, very poetic. I had to read directly from the end there because some of those lines were just so perfect.
Yeah, he's really grown. I'm sorry. His writing does objectively just get better over time, which, yeah. And this is evidence of that. So.
All right. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about before we finish this episode?
I think I only have one other thing. We mentioned this in the first recording, which was the whole Natsuhi's revelation of how could he know what my favorite season was. I only ever told Shannon, so it implies that Shannon is in on it. Whereas, to me, as soon as I read through that bit, it was just like, there's a note hidden in each part of the room for each season.
Yeah, it's definitely like a classic kind of trick, and so it's fun to see Natsuhi come to the wrong conclusions, and so we'll see if that plays out at all. Almost like the poor woman is terribly overstressed.
I mean, I was going to say it's her own doing, but it's not. It's her husband's doing, which is tale as old as time.
She may have done some things 19 years ago that may have resulted in some stuff, but
true. And she's choosing to back her husband right now rather than choosing her own peace. So, yeah, the covering up of Kinzo's death. I mean, not the playing into the 19 years ago's hands because Kraus is hostage, but
right.
Because if Kraus hadn't been an embezzling piece of shit, then she wouldn't have had to have covered up Kinzo's death and be under all of this intense pressure anyway. But also, she is a grown-ass woman and could make her own choices and leave. As difficult as that would be in the 80s for a wealthy...
In Japan, yeah, it's hard to say.
Woman, yeah, who was basically... Do we know that yet? No.
Yeah, some of the stuff that comes up in the next episode. So,
yeah.
Well, we'll let you, the listener, get to the next episode as soon as you can then, and we'll go ahead and end that here. Next week, we'll be reading about 2.5 hours of the visual novel, ending when Dlanor leaves the cathedral, the scene turns to grayscale, and the door closes. And that is videos 88 to 89 of the YouTube playlist. So I hope you all enjoyed listening to us kind of go back and think about what we thought back when we read this. Hopefully we didn't get too many spoilers in there. But next week, we'll be back to what we were recording at the time. We'll try to get that one out a bit faster than this one took because of the review. But thank you for joining us. I hope you had a good time. And remember to think off meta.